Being a pro wrestler can be very lucrative, but lots of factors, overspending, legal issues, divorces, health problems, addiction, and more can drain that big bank account pretty quickly. Right now, Dave Batista is probably better off than 99% of retired pro wrestlers, given that he's a huge movie star. But to get to lofty heights of Hollywood, the former WWE superstar had to lose just about everything. In one of two very memorable public declarations he was leaving WWE, Batista came out in a wheelchair on a 2010 episode of Raw to announce he was quitting. It was a very entertaining segment, but in reality, he wasn't happy about the direction WWE was taking, and Batista pursued acting full-time. But his early efforts only landed him a few small roles, and he ended up broke, living off his saved WWE money for 3 years straight. His house even went into foreclosure. Big Dave's fortunes didn't change until he was cast in Guardians of the Galaxy in 2013. He claims that landing the role of Drax the Destroyer changed his life and saved him from homelessness. After filming Wrapped on Guardians, Batista returned to WWE in 2014, winning that year's Royal Rumble and going on to main event WrestleMania 30. He didn't exactly get the crowd reactions he expected though, leading to another very memorable farewell. Batista returned for one final match against Triple H in 2019 and is now retired from wrestling, though he still has great appreciation for the business that kickstarted his career.
I left for certain reasons, but I love professional wrestling and I love the company.
After a successful run in WCW that included a World Heavyweight Championship reign, Lex Luger made his way to the WWF in 1993. He happened to be coming into the company just as longtime top babyface Hulk Hogan was leaving, and so after a brief run as a heel, the WWF tried to make him an all-American hero. He had a branded bus, the Lex Express, and he body-slammed Yokozuna on an aircraft carrier. He was poised to be the next top guy, but it just didn't work out. By 1995, he was back in WCW, where he was once again pretty successful, but never the guy. After WCW went out of business in 2001, Luger had a hard time, working short runs in TNA and touring the indie circuit. His personal life was also falling apart. Luger was arrested multiple times in the spring of 2003 while living with his girlfriend, fellow wrestling legend Miss Elizabeth. The charges included misdemeanor battery, driving under the influence, and 13 felony counts of drug possession. In May of that year, Miss Elizabeth died of a drug overdose. Many blamed Luger for her death. He spent the following years and almost every penny he had attempting to clear his name.
A person I was friends with and had spent so much time with had just died in my arms.
Elizabeth's death was eventually ruled as an accidental overdose, but by the time that happened, Luger was in financial ruin. Making matters worse, Luger suffered a neck injury that temporarily paralyzed him, leading to considerable healthcare costs. He still uses a wheelchair, but he did stand and walk to the podium for his WWE Hall of Fame induction in April 2025. Though he never really rose above the mid-card in his career, Perry Saturn was part of some groundbreaking groups in the 90s and early 2000s. He broke through as part of the Eliminators in ECW in 1995, performing some pretty eye-popping moves for a man of his size. That got him a spot in WCW in 1997, and by 2000, he was one of the 4 members of the Radicals, the group of superstars who jumped ship to WWE because WCW was holding them down. Saturn didn't have nearly as much success in WWE as Eddie Guerrero or Chris Benoit, but he did make some memorable moments with Terry Runnels and his mop named Moppy. WWE released Saturn in 2002, and 2 years later, he risked his life to save someone else. While he was walking his girlfriend to work, he noticed 2 men attempting to assault a woman in an alley. Saturn fended off the assailants, but in the process, he was shot in the back of the neck and the right shoulder. He survived, but was left in immense pain. He turned to drugs. Saturn admitted that he became addicted to methamphetamine and was even homeless for nearly 2 years as his addiction had taken hold of his finances. He did eventually get clean, but fell back into old habits and lost his apartment, resulting in him being back on the streets. In the time since, Saturn revealed that he has been dealing with a traumatic brain injury that left him unable to find work. Before he became a wrestler, Scott Hall was a bouncer at a nightclub in Orlando. One night in 1983, he wrenched a gun from a man outside the club and then fatally shot him with it. He was charged with second-degree murder, but the charges were eventually dropped due to lack of evidence. Hall claimed the shooting was self-defense, but also admitted that it haunted him. Hall's longtime tag team partner, Kevin Nash, said the incident made Hall a different person.
A guy's dead, and I'm the reason, and this is bad.
Hall started wrestling the following year, working in various territories before ending up in the WWF in 1992. and making a big splash as Razor Ramon. He made the jump to WCW in 1996, where he and Nash started the phenomenon of the NWO. Hall was known for living a fast and hard rockstar lifestyle, which was so apparent on screen that his drinking even became a storyline late in his WCW run. Things got so bad that Hall ended up being fired from multiple companies, and he was arrested multiple times over the years. By 2013, he was on death's door with barely a penny to his name. Thankfully, wrestling's resident guardian angel, Diamond Dallas Page, stepped in and helped Hall get back on his feet. DDP started a fundraising campaign to help Hall pay for his medical expenses, as well as paying for a hip replacement he desperately needed. The wrestling world came together to raise over $110,000, and by 2014, Hall was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, looking the best he had in years. Sadly, Hall died in March 2022 at the age of 63. All that limousine riding and jet flying doesn't come cheap. Ric Flair became one of the most memorable figures in wrestling history by playing a character who flaunted his wealth. But real life had proven that the 16-time world champion has never been particularly good with money. In 2007, the year before his first retirement at WrestleMania 24, Flair opened Flair Finance, a financial services company. It went bankrupt within a year. Quickly running out of money, Flair signed a deal with Ring of Honor in 2009. He reportedly no-showed several events, leading ROH to file a lawsuit that remains unresolved. ROH filed its suit after Flair signed another contract with TNA Wrestling in 2010. He did wrestle and appear on screen there for just over 2 years, but admitted that he pretty much just took the gig to collect a paycheck. He was paying alimony to 3 ex-wives and looking to offset pressure from the IRS to pay back taxes. Flair, who wrestled his official last match in 2022, is still on his hustle. Just a few of the branded products he has touted over the past few years include his Woo energy drink, Woo chicken wings, and his own cannabis line called Ric Flair Drip. The height of Marty Jannetty's pro wrestling success came as half of the tag team The Rockers, alongside Shawn Michaels. After the team's momentous breakup in 1992, Michaels went on to be one of WWE's biggest stars, and Jannetty struggled. His difficulty was so notable that Jannetty has even become a somewhat mean-spirited shorthand term for the member of a duo who is less successful than their partner. One source of financial hardship came before the breakup, though. During a Rockers match in 1990, Jannetty hit his inexperienced opponent Chuck Austin with the Rocker Dropper finishing move. Austin landed on his head and was almost immediately paralyzed. Austin sued both WWE and Jannetty, and a court ruled in his favor in 1994, awarding Austin almost $27 million. That was negotiated down to $10 million, but Jannetty personally had to contribute $500,000. Jannetty bounced around different promotions in the late 90s and 2000s, even making a return to WWE in 2005, but he continued to struggle financially. By 2013, reports surfaced of Jannetty stealing from vendors at wrestling conventions to get by. WWE had attempted to help Jannetty, particularly when his substance abuse issues became life-threatening. But Jannetty allegedly had a habit for rubbing people the wrong way, and he ended up having to take as many independent bookings as he could until he had to retire in 2018. Sadly, Jannetty has become best known in recent years for his questionable Facebook posts and the fact that he is so banged up he might have to have his leg amputated. He was the subject of a Dark Side of the Ring episode in 2023. While many of his contemporaries abandoned kayfabe, Michael Virgil Jones maintained it right up until the very end. Numerous legit news outlets reported upon his death in February 2024 that he was 61 when he died. He was really 72. The former WWF and WCW star spent much of his later years touring the convention circuit, where his banner often advertised him as appearing alongside his former in-ring boss, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. But DiBiase was nowhere to be found, and photos of Virgil sitting at his table or standing with his banner with no one approaching or autographs became meme fodder for years. Virgil's financial situation became so dire that in 2023 he set up a GoFundMe where people could donate money for him to buy clothes and toiletries.
I want to thank all my fans out there for really helping me out.
Virgil had numerous health issues as well. He had been diagnosed with dementia and colon cancer and suffered 2 strokes, but he was still willing to send anyone who donated money to him an autographed picture of himself. When he died, he didn't have life insurance, and his family set up another GoFundMe in the hopes of covering the funeral expenses. In the end, the wrestling world came together and raised over $16,000 to give Virgil the send-off he deserved. A deeply unfortunate truth of pro wrestling is that performers are often in considerable pain. Even setting aside major injuries, simply taking repeated bumps in and out of the ring night in and night out can lead to chronic, nagging aches. Things have improved in that regard over the past few years, but it wasn't that long ago that self-soothing with abundant painkillers and alcohol was common practice among wrestlers on the road. In the mid-2000s, Joey Mercury had become a WWE star on the rise, appearing on SmackDown nearly every week. He won the tag team championships 3 times alongside partner Johnny Nitro and was living the life that many aspiring wrestlers around the world could only dream of. However, Mercury had brought a lot of demons with him to WWE. By the time he was 15, he had already become addicted to drugs. So when he was suddenly surrounded by people who popped painkillers like Tic Tacs just to get through the day, it was no surprise that Mercury's life entered a downward spiral. Mercury was released from WWE in 2007 after his addiction got out of hand. Then WWE chairman Vince McMahon himself attempted an intervention to no avail. After bouncing around the independent scene, Mercury began to sober up, but his finances were in shambles. His house was in foreclosure and he was at risk of losing it altogether. Thankfully, CM Punk, one of Mercury's closest friends, ended up buying Mercury's house to help him keep his head above water. Mercury would return to WWE in 2010 and worked as producer until 2017. If you're ranking wrestlers based on influence, Tom Billington, the Dynamite Kid, has to be near the top of the list. So many wrestlers that came after him, particularly Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega, have been inspired by the British wrestler's explosive style. If you've ever watched a match where someone delivers a snap suplex or a diving headbutt, the Dynamite Kid is largely responsible for those moves being as common as they are today. Sadly, Billington went so hard in the ring that his body broke down faster than his contemporaries who relied on rest holds and the occasional vertical suplex. The Dynamite Kid would retire from in-ring action in 1996, having worked for years with untreated back and leg injuries. Billington developed severe substance abuse issues, which played a part in him suffering a seizure at a Japanese airport the day after his retirement match. In 1997, Billington lost the use of his left leg. From there, his financial situation got worse and worse. All of the money he had earned from wrestling around the world, as well as what was raised in a GoFundMe campaign, was sunk into paying for healthcare that would never fully work. He ended up confined to a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down. On December 5th, 2018, the Dynamite Kid died on his 60th birthday. The cause of death was officially ruled as a combination of all the major health issues he had accumulated.